my name is Caitlin Bandy, and this is my channel BandysBooks, and today I am back with a quarterly book mail video. I started my account back in October of 2021, and when I first started my account, I wasn't receiving too much book mail because I was new and nobody really knew me. But by the end of last year, December especially, I started receiving a lot of really awesome book mail from Goodreads giveaways, from awesome Instagram friends, from a couple Facebook groups that I was in, and I decided it would be a good idea to maybe do a quarterly book mail haul. And it's March, which means it's time for that quarterly book mail haul again. I'm actually starting to get to a point where I may have to consider doing this more often, like maybe every other month. But for now, we're going to keep with the quarterly, setup and see how that goes. So I have books from Facebook, I have books from Goodreads, books from Instagram, and books from Book of the Month to talk about. Lots and lots of exciting content. Obviously, because I'm talking about so many books, I'm just going to go through them very, very briefly. I'm not going to talk about them in extensive detail because otherwise we'd be here for like 3 hours. And I could talk for 3 hours, trust me, but I don't know if you want to listen that long. So I'm just going to give you the basic details of each book, where they came from. And in the case where I have a specific account that I can tag, I will be tagging it in the description. In particular, for the Instagram accounts that I'm linking, all excellent people, highly recommend following all of them. They post great bookish content and do some really cool things within the community. Same with the Facebook groups. I'm going to be tagging them. If you're a reader and you have like bookish social media, definitely worth checking out. So let's get into it. The first set of books that I'm going to be talking about, these three right here, came from a Facebook giveaway. Recently, Facebook seems to have caught on to the idea that I really like books, and I've been noticing a lot of giveaways popping up in my advertisements throughout Facebook. Now, I was a bit skeptical of these at first. I thought like, oh, this is just a spam thing for them to get your email so they can send you advertisements. And there's definitely that, don't get me wrong. You give them your email and they send you like 100 emails. But I actually won one of them, which is super exciting. I had no expectation of actually winning any books from this. So these books were from a speculative fiction giveaway that was put on by Berkeley Publishing. I got a very nice email from them saying, hey, congratulations, you've won. Here's the 3 books that you're going to be receiving. Look for them in the mail. About a week later, I received 1 book, and then the other 2 showed up about a month after that. So just be aware that sometimes the publishers send them in different packages at different times if you do sign up for any of them. And also, like I said, be prepared for your email to get lots of emails from these publishers. I'm totally okay with it because most of it is about books that are being published and whatnot, but I did use an account that is specifically for my bookish stuff. So the books that I won in this speculative fiction giveaway were Curfew by Jane Cowie. This book is about a Britain in the near future in which women dominate the workplaces, public spaces, and government, where the gender pay gap no longer exists and motherhood opens doors instead of closing them, where women are no longer afraid to walk home alone to cross a dark parking lot or to catch the last train, when all men are electronically tagged and not allowed out after 7 p.m. But the curfew hasn't made life easy for all women. Sarah is a single mother who happily rebuilt her life after her husband Greg was sent to prison for breaking curfew. Now he's about to be released, and Sarah isn't expecting a happy reunion, given that she's the reason he was sent there. Her teenage daughter Cass hates living in a world that restricts boys like her best friend Billy. Billy would never hurt anyone, and she's determined to prove it, somehow. Helen is a teacher at the local school. Secretly desperate for a baby, she's applied for a cohabitation certificate with her boyfriend Tom, and is terrified that they won't get it. The last thing she wants is to have a baby on her own. These women don't know it yet, but one of them is about to be violently murdered. Evidence will suggest that she died late at night and that she knew her attacker. It couldn't have been a man because a curfew tag is a solid alibi, isn't it? This sounds really interesting to me. I love the fact that this has taken dystopia in a different direction than usual. It is creating a world in which men are subject to the curfew and the strict regulations based on like a history of violence and things, I'm assuming. And I like the idea that somehow someone breaks the curfew and murders a woman. It's got like some mystery elements and dystopia elements. I'm really looking forward to this. This sounds super cool. Next up is The Impossible Us by Sarah Lotz. Bea thinks she has everything: a successful business, repurposing wedding dresses, friends who love and support her. She's given up on finding love, but that's fine. There's always Tinder. Nick thinks he has nothing. His writing career has stalled after early promise and his marriage is on the rocks, but that's fine. There's always Jim. So when one of Nick's emails, a viciously funny screed intended for a non-paying client, accidentally pings into B's inbox, they decide to keep the conversation going. After all, they never have to meet. But the more they get to know each other, the more B and Nick realize they want to. They both notice strange pop culture and political references that crop up in their correspondence, but nothing odd enough to stop B and Nick from falling hard for each other. When their efforts to meet in real life fail spectacularly, B and Nick discover that they're actually living in near identical but parallel worlds. With a universe between them, B and Nick will discover how far they'll go to beat impossible odds. This sounds kind of interesting. It's like romance but with sci-fi elements. I'm not sure. Like, romance isn't necessarily my favorite genre. I am reading all romance this month, so this kind of works out, and I'll probably pop that in with my other romance books. But I think it's very interesting how there's like a sci-fi and alternate universe kind of situation set up. Really curious to see where this one goes. And the last book that I was sent from the speculative fiction giveaway was Femlandia by Christina Dalcher. And this is about Miranda Reynolds always thought she would rather die than live in Femlandia. But that was before the country sank into total economic collapse and her husband walked out in the harshest, most permanent way, leaving her and her 16-year-old daughter with nothing. The streets are full of looting, robbing, and killing, and Miranda and Emma no longer have much choice. Either starve and risk getting murdered or find safety, and so they set off to Femlandia, the women-only colony Miranda's mother, Wynne Summers, established decades ago. Although Wynne is no longer in the spotlight, her protege, Jen Jones, has taken Femlandia to new heights. The off-grid colonies are secluded, self-sufficient, and thriving, and Emma is instantly enchanted by this idea of a safe haven. But something is not right. There are no men allowed in the colony, but babies are being born, and they're all girls. Miranda discovers just how the all-women community is capable of enduring, and it leads her to question how far her mother went to create this perfect, thriving, horrifying society. And this, I was so excited to find, is a signed copy. This is a beautiful book, and it sounds super interesting. I love the idea of these cult-like colonies that are created. I read a book back in October called Sorrowland with a similar concept, except the colony was all Black people. This one is all women. It sounds like it's going to create some actually similar storylines to what I saw in Sorrowland, where there might be some questionable medical experimentation, questionable morals, and a shady motivation by the cult leader. I'm really excited about this, actually. This sounds super good, right up my alley. All three of these books are fantastic, and I love that all three of these are women-focused stories. It is Women's History Month, which I am celebrating in some capacity, not necessarily the whole entire month, but most of the books on my TBR this month are by female authors, and many of them are female-focused stories. So this is awesome. Women's speculative fiction. Looking forward to reading all three of these books. They really sound like they have unique plots and are going to keep me well interested. Thank you again to Berkeley Publishing for these books. Next on my list is going to continue in Facebook, but we're going to get into a Facebook group that I belong to, and that is the group Literally Bookish. It is a fantastic book group. It is mostly about discussion. We do not promote social media there. It's all about talking about what we're reading, books that we're looking forward to, different activities. We have reading battles, reading TBR checklist sort of things that we participate in throughout the year, random acts of kindness, birthday things, all sorts of different stuff. And I have made some awesome friends through there, and I've had the joy of receiving quite a few books from this group. So the first book I'm going to be talking about was from a February activity where we were paired up with a partner, and we each had to swap, we had to swap our favorite books basically. So, I mean, not literally like send our copy of our favorite book, but we would just purchase one and swap. So my partner picked out a book for me based on, you know, my interests, my favorite types of reading, things like that. And I was stunned when I saw it. It's so beautiful, and I'm looking forward to reading it very much. That's Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This was sent to me by Terry from Literally Bookish. And can you guys just like admire how pretty this book is? And look, it even has red sprayed edges, which just pops so beautifully against the black and white cover. I'm just already all over the place. And then the page covers, it's just so pretty. This book is about Maddie, who can't remember a time before she and William lived alone on a mountain together. She must never make him upset, but when Maddie discovers the mutilated body of a fox in the woods, she realizes that they're not alone after all. There's something in the woods that wasn't there before, something that makes strange cries in the night, with something with sharp teeth and claws. When 3 strangers appear on the mountaintop, looking for the creature in the woods, Maddie knows their presence will anger William. Terrible things happen when William is angry. This sounds so good, and it's not a super long read. It looks like it is right in the 360 page, but the pages are very short. It's pretty big print on it. I am really looking forward to reading this one. I love a good like horror, mystery, thriller sort of a book, and that's kind of what this sounds like. So thank you very much, Terry. Next up, I have a couple books that came from a random act of kindness event. They were by 3 different people, so I'll shout out each person as I go. The first book is One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, and this came from Yvette from Literally Bookish. Thank you, Yvette. And this book says, pay close attention and you might solve this. On Monday afternoon, 5 students at Bayview High walk into detention. Bronwyn, the brain, is Yale-bound and never breaks a rule. Addie, the beauty, is the picture-perfect homecoming princess. Nate, the criminal, is already on probation for dealing. Cooper, the athlete, is the all-star baseball pitcher, and Simon, the outcast, is the creator of Bayview High's notorious gossip app. Only Simon never makes it out of that classroom. Before the end of detention, Simon's dead, and according to investigators, his death was an accident. On Monday, he died, but on Tuesday, he planned to post juicy reveals about all 4 of his high-profile classmates, which makes all 4 of them suspects in his murder. Or are they just the perfect patsies for a killer who's still on the loose? Everyone has secrets, right? What really matters is how far you would go to protect them. So this sounds super interesting. I know that there is a follow-up book or 2 as well. I've been wanting to read this, so I am really pleased to have picked up this copy. Thank you again, Yvette. After that, I have The Secret Sillers by Jane Healy, and this came from Amber, also from Literally Bookish. This is a historical fiction, and it is about Anna Kavanagh is a restless young widow and brilliant French teacher at a private school in Washington, D.C. Everything changes when she's recruited into the Office of Strategic Services by family friend and legendary World War I hero, Major General William Donovan. Donovan has faith in her, and in all his glorious amateurs who are becoming Anna's fast friends. Maggie, Anna's down-to-earth mentor, Irene, who's struggling to find support from her husband for her clandestine life, and Julia, a cheerful OSS liaison. But the more Anna learns about the organization's secret missions, the more she longs to be stationed abroad. Then comes the opportunity. Go undercover as a spy in the French resistance to help steal critical intelligence that could ultimately turn the tide of the war. Dispatched behind enemy lines and in constant danger, Anna is filled with adrenaline, passion, and fear. She's driven to make a difference, and for her country. Whatever the risk, she's willing to take it to help liberate Flanders. Whatever the risk, she's driven to make a difference for her country and for herself. Whatever the risk, she's willing to take it to help liberate France from the shadows of occupation and to free herself from the shadows of her former life. This sounds super interesting to me. So I read a ton of historical fiction. It's one of my absolute favorite genres, but World War I is probably the era that I read the least about. I want to say that probably I read the heaviest amount of historical fiction in relationship to World War II, and then after that, maybe like Vietnam, Korea, Laos, and maybe even after that, like American Revolution, Civil War kind of era. And I honestly don't think I can remember ever reading a historical fiction about World War I. So this sounds super exciting to me. Thank you so much, Amber. I'm really looking forward to this. And the third random act of kindness from Literally Bookish came from Melissa, and that was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a book that I have really been looking forward to. It is wildly popular. I believe it's been made into a movie now, and there are some follow-up books that have been published. This is a book that unfortunately has been banned in several school districts. It's had some controversy around it because it talks about racism and police brutality against Black people. And I'm probably actually going to do a banned book video about this at some point. But I just wanted to say thank you to Melissa for this. I was so happy to receive this. This is basically about a young lady named Star who's kind of stuck between two worlds: her poor black neighborhood where she lives and her fancy suburban prep school that she attends. There's an uneasy balance between the two worlds, and it is shattered when Star witnesses the fatal shooting of her childhood best friend Khalil at the hands of a police officer. Khalil was unarmed. Soon afterward, Khalil's death is a national headline. Some are calling him a thug, maybe even a drug dealer and a gangbanger. Star's best friend at school suggests he may have had it coming. When it becomes clear the police have little interest in investigating the incident, protesters take to the streets, and Star's neighborhood becomes a war zone. What everyone wants to know is what really went down that night, and the only person alive who can answer that is Star. But what Star does or does not say could destroy her community. It could also endanger her life. So this is a particularly relevant book right now because of all of the trials that are occurring in the United States. Obviously, police brutality, the level of training that police are receiving in terms of confronting suspects of crimes and traffic stops and things like that. All of those things are big discussions, and I'm looking forward to reading this and seeing the perspective provided in this book. Next up, I'm going to talk about a book where I'm not exactly sure where it came from. Usually when I receive books from publishers, I get some sort of letter with the book that explains who's sending it to me. The package will have the name of the publisher and their address, some sort of identifying mark. In this case, I received this book. It had no return address, no identifying features, and no letter in it. So I'm not really sure where it came from. I've searched through all of my emails because when you win stuff from a publisher or from Goodreads or anything like that, you get an email saying congratulations. No emails about it. I've looked through my Instagram to see if it came from a giveaway. So at this point, I'm not sure if I just am on maybe like a publisher's list from entering a giveaway at some point, but I received this book. I don't know where it came from, so I'm sorry. If you happen to watch this video and it came from you, let me know because I'm clueless on it. That is Dreamfall by Amy Plum. Sleep comes easily for most people, but it's an impossible dream for Kata, Fergus, and the 5 other teens who volunteered to take part in a radical new treatment. They suffer from devastating insomnia and are desperate for help. So desperate that they're willing to undergo an experimental procedure that has only ever been tested on one other patient. They're supposed to be the beta group, but this time nothing goes as planned. Soon after the 7 of them are put under, catastrophe strikes, and they find themselves thrown together in a shared dream world with no memory of the experiment or any idea how they got there. As Kata and the others try to figure out what's happening to them, they come to the terrifying realization that they are trapped in a place where their worst nightmares come to life. Hunted by creatures from their deepest, darkest imaginations and tormented by terrible secrets they'd rather keep buried, the teens are forced to band together to face their biggest fears. And if these dreamers can't find a way to defeat them, they won't have a hope of ever waking up. This did come from Harper Teens Publishing, which is a segment of HarperCollins Publishing. I'm guessing that this must have come from them. I just don't know how or why. So thank you, HarperCollins, if you sent this to me. Sounds like a really interesting book. I like the idea of this dreamscape and them being stuck there. It kind of reminds me a bit of The Matrix. I haven't actually seen The Matrix, or The Matrix in its entirety, I should say. I've seen a couple clips of it, but the general concept of it sounds kind of similar to The Matrix. They're going to be in like a dreamscape and stuck there. I'm for it. It sounds like a good read to me. Next up, I have the books that I have received from Goodreads lately. There's a couple of them, and they cover a variety of topics. They sound very interesting. First up is Open, an uncensored memoir of love, liberation, and non-monogamy by Rachel Krantz. So this is a memoir about Rachel Krantz's experiences with polyamory and non-monogamy, or an open relationship. And it says, when Rachel Krantz met and fell for Adam, he told her that he was looking for a committed partnership, just one that did not include exclusivity. Intrigued and more than a little nervous, Rachel decided to see whether their love could coexist with the freedom to date other people. Could they strike an exquisite balance between intimacy and independence, and find a way to feel passion for each other once the honeymoon phase ended? Rachel chronicles her dive into non-monogamy in Open, her extraordinary debut memoir. An award-winning journalist, Rachel interviewed scientists, psychologists, and people living and loving outside the mainstream as she searched to understand what non-monogamy would do to her heart, her mind, and her life. From exploring Brooklyn sex parties to the wider swinger and polyamory communities, Rachel and Adam attempt to write a new plot for their love story. but they also run up against miscommunications, ancient power dynamics, and seeming betrayals that threaten their love. In these pages, Rachel casts new light on the unique ways coercion and gaslighting manifest in open relationships, and finds herself wondering what liberation really looks like. With an unflinching eye and page-turning storytelling, Open is an unprecedented warts-and-all exploration of non-monogamy, groundbreaking in both its documentarian approach and its explicit subject matter. From debilitating anxiety spirals to heart-opening connections with the men and women she dates, Rachel puts her whole self on the line as she searches for answers to questions like, can we have both freedom and love, comfort and lust? Is a relationship ever equal, and is the pleasure worth the pain? This sounds really interesting to me. I do have a couple friends that are in open or non-monogamous relationships, and I'm not completely unfamiliar with the topic, but I don't know a whole bunch of the nuance that goes into having an open relationship. I mean, I understand the concept. You have multiple partners. You're committed to the person that you're with. Emotionally, you're supportive of them. You go on dates. You might even live with them, but you might have another partner. I think that, if that works for someone, whatever floats their boat, it's cool with me. As long as everybody is consenting and on the same page, then, cool. I'm curious to see what the experience is for this woman going from a place of monogamy to non-monogamy, and, the struggles that she might deal with. I could see how jealousy, miscommunications, gaslighting, things like that could come up within non-monogamy, but obviously there's a healthy balance with any relationship. And yeah, I'm really curious about it. Sounds like it's going to be a really interesting read. And this is also my romance TBR for the month. It kind of, to balance out some of the lighter, fluffier reading, I figured that this would count because it is about relationships. Next up, I have a book called Davos Man, How the Billionaires Devoured the World. This is an uncorrected proof, so this is an ARC copy, and it is by Peter S. Goodman. He is a global economics correspondent for the New York Times. So this book is about 5 representative Davos men, chronicling how their shocking exploitation of the global pandemic has accelerated a 50-year trend of wealth centralization. Jeff Bezos, the wealthiest man on earth, Jamie Dimon, CEO of America's largest bank, Steven Schwarzman, head of private equity giant Blackstone, Larry Fink, the world's largest asset manager, and tech entrepreneur Mark Benioff. Alongside this reporting, Goodman delivers textured portraits of those caught in Davos Man's wake, including a former steelworker in the American Midwest, a Bangladeshi migrant in Qatar, a Seattle doctor on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19, blue-collar workers in the tenements of Buenos Aires, an African immigrant in Sweden, an Amazon warehouse employee in New York City, and more. So this sounds very interesting. I took a bit of economics in school. I did start a business degree when I was younger. I did not finish it, but some of the classes that I took were macroeconomics and microeconomics. And I find economics as well as politics to be really interesting subjects. And I think this is going to touch on a lot of this. Obviously, there's an extreme wealth disparity within the world. There are people that are reaching stratas of wealth that are bigger than individual countries' economies, which is mind-boggling when you really think about it. And the disparity between that wealthy top and the world's, even middle class is just extraordinary. The amount of money that some of these men make in one day is more than most people will make in an entire year. And I'm curious to see the exploration of that particular type of economics, and in particular, the way that it contrasts against all of these more normal people that it discusses in the book. And then the third book that I have from Goodreads is The Great Mrs. Elias by Barbara Chase Roubeau. This book is about Hannah Elias, born in Philadelphia in the late 1800s, and she's done things she's not proud of to survive. Shedding her past, Hannah slips on a new identity before relocating to New York City to become as rich as a robber baron. Hannah quietly invests in the stock market, growing her fortune with the help of businessmen and spreading her money across 29 accounts. Finally, attaining the life she's always dreamed of, she buys a mansion of the Upper West Side and decorates it in gold and first-rate decor inspired by her idol, Cleopatra. When an unsolved murder turns Hannah's world upside down, everything she's built is threatened. Hounded by the salacious press, the very private Mrs. Elias finds herself alone, ensnared in a scandalous trial and accused of stealing her fortunes from whites. Packed with glamour, suspense, and drama, populated with real-life luminaries from the period, The Great Miss Elias brings a fascinating woman and the age she embodied to glorious tragic life. So one of the things that I found really fascinating about this, I thought that this was fiction. I didn't realize that Hannah Elias is actually a real person. This is historical fiction. I am really fascinated with the idea of a black woman in the 1800s who is working as a prostitute in Philadelphia, becoming one of the richest people in the world in New York City and a well-respected socialite. I'm also really curious about this murder that she gets tied up in that affects her social status. I think this is going to be a really intriguing book. This is also an ARC copy, so I received an uncorrected proof of it. And one thing that I found really cool is on the back, there's this whole list of the marketing and publicity campaign for it. I don't know if I noticed that on the other one. Oh yeah, there's also on the back of this one, the marketing campaign as well. So that's kind of cool. I don't receive a ton of ARC uncorrected proof sort of. So I don't know if this is a normal thing, but be checking out some of these marketing campaigns as well. All right, so now we're gonna get into Instagram. I have so much fun stuff from Instagram. I'm really excited to talk about it. So first up, I am going to talk about a set of books that I received from a Instagram called BAM the Agency. I only have one of the books with me, and that's because my mom has the other 3 books that I received. She wanted to read them, and I'm way behind on my reading. So I was like, go ahead and borrow them, read them, and just bring them back when you're done. And they were all 4 books that I'm very interested in. They're talking about relevant social issues, current political themes. Very, very interesting books. So let's get into that. The first book I received from BAM the Agency was No Heaven for Good Boys by Keisha Burns. And this is the book, my mom actually read this already. She devoured it because, she said it was a really good book. And this book is about 6-year-old Ibrahima loves snatching pastries from his mother's kitchen, harvesting string beans with his father, and searching for sea glass with his sisters. But when he is approached in his rural village one day by Marabut Ahmed, a seemingly kind stranger and highly regarded teacher, the tides of his life turn forever. Ibrahima is sent to the capital city of Dakar to join his cousin Etienne in studying the Quran under Marabut Ahmed for a year. But instead of the days of learning that Ibrahima's parents imagined, the young boys called Talibe are forced to beg in the streets in order to line their teachers' pockets. To make it back home, Etienne and Ibrahima must help each other survive both the dangers posed by their marabouts and the darker sides of Dakar, threats of black market organ traders, rival packs of Talibe, and mounting students protesting on the streets. Drawn from real incidents and transporting readers between rural and urban Senegal, No Heaven for Good Boys is a tale of hope, resilience, and the affirming power of love. So this book sounds super interesting for me. It's set in Senegal. I don't know if I've ever read a book set in Senegal, so I'm excited to learn a little bit about the country, a little bit more about its history and going-ons, culture, all that. Kind of reminds me a bit of Oliver Twist in that these kids are basically put into gangs and then forced to be like street urchins to support the head of the gang. I also thought it was interesting, just in that description there, they call the groups of boys Talibe. In Arabic, this is student or a conjugation of the word student. So I think that's kind of interesting. They're literally calling the gangs of kids students, even though they're like roving gangs begging for them. My mom said that this was a really sad read, that it's very emotional, and you find yourself really rooting for the characters. I look forward to reading it, and we'll probably be reading it relatively soon. In addition to No Heaven for Good Boys, I also received Sissy, and Sissy is about a trans character and their journey through their transition. I am looking forward to reading that one as well. And What Would Frida Do? It's about Frida Kahlo, another book that I'm really looking forward to reading. I have visited several of the locations that are very famous in regards to Frida in Mexico City and in Guanajuato. And I am looking forward to seeing what this book can provide me in terms of learning about her. And the final book that I received from BAM the Agency is We're Speaking by Kamala Harris. And this book is about her rise in politics. I'm very, very interested in reading this. It's not a super big book. It's, it looks like it's pretty concise and to the point. And it, is going to discuss her journey in politics as a Black Asian woman, it, for me, seems pretty significant because as a woman, seeing the first female VP was pretty remarkable and inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about her story. So big thank you to BAM, the agency, for these 4 lovely books. I also want to shout them out because they do this thing called a book jam every month where they feature a different book, and it's always something that's pretty relevant about unique issues, about things that are current, historical, etc. And they highlight some really, really great stuff. I think the last month, I think in February, they discussed Black Cake, if I remember correctly, or maybe that's the one they're discussing this month in March. But definitely worth checking out. They're a pretty cool publicity agency down in San Diego, and I love that they have this like monthly focus on different books. Next up is the book Anthem by Noah Hawley. I won this from a giveaway on Instagram from Brandy Reads. Brandy is another lovely Instagrammer that I am friends with. I got to know her when I first started Instagram because I accidentally pocket dialed her via like the FaceTime within the app, and she was so lovely about it. I had like 10 followers, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to call you. And she made a joke about like not being prepared for a FaceTime chat at the moment, and we've been friends ever since. So I was really pleased to receive this book. This is about Float Anxiety Abatement Center in the suburb of Chicago. Simon Oliver is trying to recover from his sister's tragic passing. He breaks out to join a woman named Louise and a man called Prophet on a quest as urgent as it is enigmatic. Who lies at the end of the road? A man known as the Wizard, whose past encounter with Louise sparked her own collapse. Their quest becomes a rescue mission when they join up with a man whose sister is being held captive by the Wizard, impregnated and imprisoned in a tower. Noah Hawley's new novel is an adventure that finds unquenchable lights in dark corners, unforgettably vivid characters, and a plot as fast and bright as pop cinema blend in a Vonnegutian, I see like Kurt Vonnegut, man, I can't pronounce that, in a Vonnegutian story that is as timeless as a grim fairy tale. It is a leap into the idiosyncratic pulse of the American heart, written with the bravado, literary power, and feverish foresight that have made Hawley one of our most essential writers. This sounds fascinating. Another kind of a dystopia, mystery, murder sort of a thing. I am looking forward to reading this one very much. Thank you so much, Brandy, for this. And after that, I have a book that is actually on my romance TBR for the month. And this was a book that I received at Christmas time. I won it in a giveaway as well. My friend Anna, the sustainable reader, who I feel like I'm mentioning in almost every video now, is the person that gifted this to me. So her giveaway was to win a $15 gift card to an indie bookstore plus one surprise book. And she knew that I was going to be doing this romance month eventually. She's a very avid romance reader, and she knows that that's not my typical genre. So she sent me a More Actually, which is a compilation of different holiday-centered romance stories featuring Latinx writers. So it is written by Adriana Herrera, Alexis Daria, Diana Munoz Stewart, Mia Sosa, Priscilla Oliveras, Sabrina Sol, and Zoe Castillo. This is about Christmas Eve in New York City when anything is possible. For these couples, it's the season to find true love. From second chances, big leaps, misconnections, and reconnections, this charming collection celebrates the spirit of the holidays and delivers 9 perfect happily ever afters. I am really looking forward to this. One of my biggest problems with romance in general, and it's been getting better, but it's not all the way there yet, is that there is a lack of representation in romance. I mean, there's a lack of representation in publishing across every genre, but in particular, I feel like romance can be very, very underrepresented. And I appreciate that she picked a book for me that highlights a group of Latinx authors and Latinx love stories. I'm really looking forward to reading this one. And also from my friend Anna, she recently sent me this package, and it was a complete surprise. I had no idea that she was sending me anything. I had been having kind of an overwhelming month in February. There was a lot going on. My partner's nephew declared asylum from Cuba and moved in with us. We were not really prepared for that. There's some pressures going on, and then there's there's a lot going on. I won't get into it here. But I had a little bit of a rough month in February, and so out of nowhere, I received this box in the mail. It was a complete surprise. I didn't know where it was coming from. And Anna does a Etsy account where she does these cool book boxes. They're designed like other book boxes, except she uses sustainable products and she recycles used books. I really like that. I think that it's great to reuse your books, and I love that she features, these sustainable products. So I'm going to show you the box that she sent me. So it comes with this beautiful packaging, and inside of it there was this beautiful card, this handmade card with this really sweet note that she wrote me, and several bookmarks. Oh, I have one that's in my currently reading book, but several bookmarks. This one says, "Sorry, I'm booked for the day," and this one says, "Bookish, babe." Love both of those. There is some really yummy smelling bath salts from Besties for Resties Natural Amour. This is a Mediterranean sea salt, vanilla, and citrus oil sweet bath salt. It smells so good. Oh, I cannot wait to use this. And then there is from Natural Amour as well, French green clay and matcha, which is a clarifying clay mask. I'm so looking forward to seriously like a home spa day. And this beautiful, just delightfully smelling soap. It's so pretty. And the book that was in here was a book that I'm so excited to have received. It was one that I was thinking about purchasing for my romance book month, but I actually already had so many that I'd been gifted. I was like, oh, well, if I come across a copy. And she happened to send it to me. And that was The Proposal by Jasmine Gilroy. Again, I am so pleased that she picked a book with representation. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about Anna's account, The Sustainable Reader. She focuses on representation. She's a romance reader, and she is Latina, and so she focuses a lot on authors of varying backgrounds, and instead of just constantly posting about whatever's popular and trendy. So I am really excited to read this book. It was a Reese's Book Club pick and a New York Times bestseller. And I will say I already opened this package because I didn't know what it was, but it did come really beautifully wrapped in butcher paper and twine, and it was just a joy to open this whole package. So thank you so much, Anna, both for the giveaway book from December and for this beautiful gift that you sent me the other day. It was such a joy to open this, and it really put a smile on my face. It was very thoughtful of you. And if you're interested in any sort of book boxes by The Sustainable Reader, I'm going to link her Etsy below. You should definitely check it out. She's got some really great book boxes on there. There are different books and different themes throughout, but all of them use sustainable products, and all of them include secondhand books. And finally, we're going to get to Book of the Month. I have quite the stack there, and I've only been doing it for 4 months. So recently I found my new obsession. I'm a little late to the game. I did not do any book subscriptions prior to December. I didn't even know it was really a thing. Consider me oblivious to the world. December through March, so we'll go through them quickly. In December, I only got 2 books, and that's because I was just trying it out to see if I liked it, what the quality of the books were. And the 2 books that I got were Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. This is about Olga and her brother Pedro Prieto Acevedo in 2017. They're bold-faced names in their hometown of New York. Prieto is a popular congressman representing their gentrifying Latinx neighborhood in Brooklyn, while Olga is the Tony wedding planner for Manhattan's power brokers. Despite their alluring public lives, behind closed doors, things are far less rosy. Sure, Olga can orchestrate the love stories of the 1%, but she can't seem to find her own, until she meets Mateo, who forces her to confront the effects of long-held family secrets. Olga and Prieto's mother, Blanca, a young lord-turned-radical, abandon her children to advance a militant political cause, leaving them to be raised by their grandmother. Now with the winds of hurricane season, Blanca has come barreling back into their lives. Set against the backdrop of New York City, in the months surrounding the most devastating hurricane in Puerto Rico's history, Xochitl Gonzalez, Olga Dies Dreaming is a story that examines political corruption, familial strife, and the very notion of the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. I've been seeing rave reviews for this, and I am so looking forward to reading it. This cover is absolutely stunning. I love all the colors on it. It's just such a beautiful book, and it sounds really, really interesting as well. And then the second book I got in December was History of Wild Places by Shea Earnshaw. I talked about this extensively in January, so I'm not going to go into great detail about it right now. This was such a remarkably good read. I really enjoyed it. It is magical realism, mystery. It involves kind of a cultish situation, a missing writer, an independent investigator, a private investigator who tries to track her down. There's a lot going on, and it is really well done. It isn't the most shocking twist in the world, but the thing that I like about it is that even though I kind of knew where the story was going, it didn't take away from the story. For me, a lot of the times with these like really psychological thrillers, once you discover the twist, half the fun of the book is over. But with this one, even though I kind of knew where it was going, it maintained my interest. It was just so beautifully written, and I am now a Shea Earnshaw fan. I will be reading their other books soon. For January, I got one new book and 2 books that were on my backlist. So I have created a massive backlist of Book of the Month books. I have probably 100, 120 books that were on previous Book of the Month months and that I have listed so I can add them as add-ons. And so in January, there weren't as many books that I was super interested in for the current selection, so I just picked the one that I was most interested in and then a couple add-ons. The book that I picked for the month was The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis, and that is about the Frick family. 8 months since losing her mother in the Spanish flu outbreak of 1919, 21-year-old Lillian Carter's life has completely fallen apart. For the past 6 years, under the moniker Angelica, Lillian was one of the most sought-after artist models in New York City, which statues based on her figure gracing landmarks from the Plaza Hotel to the Brooklyn Bridge. But with her mother gone, a grieving Lillian is rudderless and desperate. The work has dried up, and a looming scandal has left her entirely without a safe haven. So when she stumbles upon an employment opportunity at the Frick Mansion, a building that ironically bears her own visage, Lillian jumps at the chance. But the longer she works as a private secretary to the imperious and demanding Helen Frick, the daughter and heiress of industrialist and art patron Henry Clay Frick, the more deeply her life gets intertwined with that of the family, pulling her into a tangled web of romantic trysts, stolen jewels, and family drama that runs so deep the stakes just may be life or death. This sounds really interesting. I've heard pretty good reviews about this as well. Not necessarily rave reviews, but solid. And I'm looking forward to getting into it. And then the 2 add-ons that I selected were Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I actually had already read this book. I read it back in October when I first started my Bookish accounts. And I really, really loved it. This is a psychological thriller where I did not guess the twist. And that is unusual for me. I rarely do not guess the twists. I kind of had an idea with who would be involved in the twist, but no idea what was actually going to happen. This blew my mind and is still to this day one of my favorite psychological thrillers. I think I've mentioned on my channel many times before that I only keep hardback copies if I'm reading something and it's a paperback copy. Unless hardbacks don't exist of that particular book, I will get rid of the hardback. I'll donate it to a little free library, do a giveaway, whatever. And then I will buy myself a nice hardback copy to keep. So because I love this book so much, I decided to go ahead and get myself a copy for Book of the Month. I've been struggling to find it anywhere else as hardbacks. Like when I was looking on Amazon, hardbacks were either non-existent or they cost like $100. So I was so pleased to see it on Book of the Month. And then I got Sinkofa by Chibundu Onuzo. And I read this last month for Black History Month, and I really enjoyed this. Honestly, my TBR for last month was killer. So if you want to see my wrap up on my Black History Month reading, check out this link up here. Maybe watch the rest of this video first and then check that video out. But it was so many 5 and 4-star reads. I cannot get over how good the month was. Sankofa was one of my top reads. It was really, really creative and good. Basically, it features a character named Anna. She grows up in England with her mother, and she never knows who her father is. Not his name, not anything about him. Her mother's very reluctant to talk about him. After her mother passes, she finds this journal that her father had written and comes to discover that her father is the ex-dictator of a small African nation. She eventually ends up flying over to this African nation and finding a way to get to know her father. It's really fascinating, and it's mostly about the dynamic between the two of them. She has some conflicted feelings about his politics, about this nation, and then it's a lot about getting to know her culture and her identity. I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a very, very fascinating read. For February, I got some killer books as well. I got Don't Cry For Me by Daniel Black. This was one of the main selections for the month and one that I was really looking forward to reading. This is about Jacob who lies dying, and he begins to write a letter to his only son, Isaac. They have not met or spoken in many years, and there are things that Isaac must know. Stories about his ancestral legacy in rural Arkansas that extends back to slavery. Secrets from Jacob's tumultuous relationship with Isaac's mother, and the shame he carries from the dissolution of their family. Tragedies that inform Jacob's role as father and his relation to Isaac being gay. But most of all, Jacob must share with Isaac the unspoken truths that reside in his heart. He must give voice to the trauma that Isaac has inherited, and he must create a space for the two to find peace. With piercing insight and profound empathy, acclaimed author Daniel Black illuminates the lived experiences of Black fathers and queer sons, offering an authentic and ultimately hopeful portrait of reckoning and reconciliation. This, I know, is going to be a heartbreaker. I read a lot of reviews because obviously this was popping up everywhere on social media, and everyone was saying how good it was, but also how heartbreaking it was. I'm really looking forward to reading this. I didn't get to it last month because I received my package kind of halfway through the month and I was already into a lot of books, but I will be reading it soon for sure. I got Behold the Dreamers by Imbolo Mbue, and I did actually finish this book last month. I talk about that extensively again in my Black History Month review video with all my reading updates, but this was a really solid read. It follows a family of immigrants from Cameroon. The wife is here on a student visa. She wants to become a pharmacist, and the husband is in the asylum process. The asylum process, in case you're unaware, can take years. It's this very vague, complex process that really you don't receive any sort of guideline for. Like, there's no like, okay, you wait a year and then you get your papers, or your trial occurs at this point. And right now it's so backlogged and it keeps changing under different political administrations. There was an asylum process under Obama. It changed drastically under Trump. It's changed again under Biden. And because it continues to change, it leaves people that are in this process in literally this very vague, frustrating limbo. This book captures that excellently. It goes over all the struggles of somebody that is in the asylum process. There are some plot points in the story that are fictional and a little bit out there, but for the most part, this really accurately conveys what immigration can be like. And I thought it was really well written. Definitely a book I would recommend. I also received In Every Mirror She's Black by Lola Akinmade Akerstrom. And this book is about Kemi Adeyemi, a successful marketing executive who is lured from the US to Sweden by Johnny van Linden, CEO of the nation's largest marketing firm, to help fix a PR fiasco involving a racially tone-deaf campaign. A killer at work, but a failure in love, Kemi's move is a last-ditch effort to reclaim her social life. A chance meeting with Johnny in business class en route to the US propels former model-turned-flight attendant Brittany Ray Johnson into a life of wealth, luxury, and privilege, a life she's not sure she wants, as the object of his unhealthy obsession. And refugee Muna Sahid, who lost her entire family, finds a job cleaning the toilets at Johnny's office as she works to establish her residency in Sweden, and more importantly, seeks connection and a place she can call home. Told through the perspectives of each of the three women, In Every Mirror She's Black is a fast-paced, richly nuanced contemporary social novel that explores the deepest depths of what it means to be a Black woman navigating a white-dominated society. This sounds really fascinating, and I've also read a lot of really good reviews of this book as well. I hope to read this very soon. And now for March, the 3 books that I picked for this month, and I've only just received, I think I got them, what are we on, the 7th? I got them 3 days ago. So I'm very much looking forward to reading all 3 of these. I was so stoked on the selection of books this month. And also, while I'm at it, is anyone else like totally shook about them switching from 5 books to 7 books per month now? I had it set up so that I could get all the books that I wanted in the month, plus even get some of the books that I had on my backlog. But now that they're switching to 7 books a month, I don't know how I'm gonna get my backlogged books. I might have to sign up for a second subscription. So the 3 books that I picked out this month are all 3 of their current picks. And the first one is The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I have never read anything by St. James before, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I've heard very good things. This book is set in 1977, Clear Lake, Oregon, and was shaken by the Lady Killer murders. 2 men, seemingly randomly, were murdered with the same gun, with strange notes left behind. Beth Greer was a perfect suspect, a rich, eccentric 23-year-old woman seen fleeing one of the crime scenes, but she was acquitted and she retreated to the isolation of her mansion. Oregon, 2017. Shea Collins is a receptionist, but by night she runs a true crime website, The Book of Cold Cases, a passion fueled by the attempted abduction she escaped as a child. When she meets Beth by chance, Shea asks her for an interview. To Shea's surprise, Beth says yes. They meet regularly at Beth's mansion, though Shea is never comfortable there. Items move when she's not looking, and she gets where she's seen a girl outside the window. The allure of learning the truth about the case from the smart, charming Beth is too much to resist. But even as they grow close, Shea senses something isn't right. Is she making friends with a manipulative murderer, or are there other dangers lurking in the darkness of the Greer house? That sounds amazing to me. I cannot wait to dive into this. I also got The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. This is a fantasy, I believe. Neil Young's whole life and greatest passion is cartography. Her father, Dr. Daniel Young, is a legend in the field and Nell's personal hero. But she hasn't seen or spoken to him ever since he cruelly fired her and destroyed her reputation after an argument over an old, cheap gas station highway map. But when Dr. Young is found dead in his office at the New York Public Library with the very same seemingly worthless map hidden in his desk, Nell can't resist investigating. To her surprise, she soon discovers that the map is incredibly valuable and exceedingly rare. In fact, she may now have the only copy left in existence because a mysterious collector has been hunting down and destroying every last one, along with anyone who gets in the way. But why? To answer that question, Nell embarks on a dangerous journey to reveal a dark family secret and discovers the true power that lies in the map. This sounds great. It's kind of funny because in a way, the summary of this reminds me of The Cemetery of Forgotten Books by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. There is certain books and they're like forgotten, and there's copies of them in a library, and in certain cases there's this shady person who's hunting down these lost copies. Kind of the same thing going on here. I'm curious to see what direction this book goes. I'm sure it's going to be a completely unique plot. I love the idea of it, and this cover is so cool. Sounds really fantastic. And the last book of March was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I have read one other book by Lucy Foley before, and that was The Guest List. I think that was about a 4-star read for me, and I was very pleased. It kept me pretty well on my toes most of the way through the book. Did figure out some of the twists, but I didn't figure out all of the twists, and I really enjoyed her writing style. So I thought I would check this one out as well. Jess needs a fresh start. She's broken alone, and she's just left her job under less than ideal circumstances. Her half-brother Ben didn't sound thrilled when she asked if she could crash with him for a bit, but he didn't say no, and surely everything will look better from Paris. Only when she shows up to find a very nice apartment, could Ben really have afforded this? He's not there. The longer Ben stays missing, the more Jess starts to dig into her brother's situation, and the more questions she has. Ben's neighbors are an eclectic bunch and not particularly friendly. Jess may have come to Paris to escape her past, but it's starting to look like it's Ben's future that's in doubt. Everyone's a neighbor, everyone's a suspect, and everyone knows something they're not telling. This sounds really good. I'm looking forward to reading it as well. So that is all my book mail for the last 3 months so far. I'm only at the beginning of March, so I may receive more in March, but that'll be in the next quarterly update. I hope that you enjoyed seeing what I've been getting in the mail, what I'm looking forward to reading in the future, and if you like the video, hit the thumbs up, it helps. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Bookish mail is. Do you get Book of the Month or any other Bookish subscription? Do you get AARC? Do you get ARC copies from any of the publishers? Have you won any Goodreads giveaways, Instagram giveaways, anything like that? Tell me all about it. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel and you like regular Bookish content, please consider subscribing. That also helps, because then I know, that I'm doing things consistently that you like. And if you have a Bookish channel of your own, please let me know, because I like to follow other Bookish creators. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Caitlin Bandy. This is Bandy's Books. We'll see you next time.